The Invisible Boy, an Italian fantasy superhero movie, will be explained today. Spoilers ahead. Take care and be cautious. We first witness a young Italian child named Michele Silenzi cycling to school in Trieste at the start of the film. He has a €50 bill that he intends to use to purchase a costume for a party. He is seated behind Stella, his longtime love interest, at school. A police officer named Giovanna, who also happens to be Michele's mother, interrupts their class. She comes there to find out more about the disappearance of a pupil. If anyone hears from the missing pupil, Giovanna asks the class to let the police know. Michele rushes to the loo after she left because his nose is starting to bleed. His bullies, who have been bothering him for a while, threaten to take all of his money from him. He returns home after the encounter has discouraged him. He pulls out some spare pennies and chooses to use them to purchase one. Then Michele goes to a store that seems run down and requests a superhero suit. He receives a cheap cloak and skin-tight dungarees from the shopkeeper. He asserts that it is a Chinese superhero's outfit. Even though Michele doesn't seem to like the costume, she decides to buy it. Giovanna finds Michele in his costume refusing to attend the party because he believes he looks foolish when she gets home from work. She tells him he looks wonderful, then directs him to the party. Michele has a good time there and even chats with Stella, his crush. Then, though, a video of Stella crossing the street is played by his bullies. They assert that Michele has been stalking Stella and that the footage was discovered on his phone. Michele locks himself in the loo after becoming ashamed. From outside, all of his students pound on the door, pleading for him to unlock it. Right before the lights go out, Michele is frustrated and wishes that he was invisible. The next scene shows him leaping from the bathroom window and returning to his house. Michele hears his dog barking at him when he wakes up the following morning. He brushes his teeth in the bathroom while paying him little attention. Michele is utterly astonished to see only his robe and the brush when he looks in the mirror. In the mirror, his body is not apparent. As soon as he leaves, Michele removes his robe. The youngster is then completely ignored by his mother when she enters, demonstrating that only Michele is able to perceive himself. When she begins to check around, Michele immediately writes on a piece of paper and places it on the bed that he left for school early. Giovanna reads it and brushes the situation off. She makes a phone call to Michele after exiting the room. It is picked up by an invisible Michele, who informs her that he is okay. He gets dressed in long sleeves because he's unsure of what to do next. He goes to school while keeping every inch of his body covered and keeps an eye on Stella. When Michele sees his aggressor, she decides to discipline him for bothering him so often. He strips off his clothing and enters the school while remaining undetected. He takes the bully's paintball gun during class and shoots the teacher, causing the teacher to suspend the bully. Then, Michele moves to the girls' dressing area and observes them changing. A towel falls on him suddenly, revealing his silhouette to everyone. His abilities begin to weaken just then, making him once again apparent. The girls screech as they discover Michele undressed behind the towel. The following day, Michele is in his class listening to a talk about teen mental health from a psychologist by the name of Bashful. In light of the recent home runs by two of Michele's classmates, he believes it is important to comprehend how teenagers think. His hands begin to glow while Michele listens to the lesson, then vanish instantly. Fortunately, the class is ended, and he exits before anyone notices him vanish. His little sister Candela is in his room when he runs home, covering every inch of his body. While facing the wall, Michele requests that she proceed downstairs. Opening and closing the door to give the impression that she has departed, a suspicious Candela. Without looking back to make sure, Michele begins to undress. Candela screams in terror as soon as he turns around, realizing her brother isn't there. She is soothed by Michele, who also explains that he has superpowers because to his outfit. The psychiatrist Bashful collaborates with Giovanna to look into the case of the missing children while they are both at the police station. Giovanna worries that the kids could be abducted, but Bashful counters that they are simply acting up, which is typical of their age. Giovanna's return home finds Michele still missing. Giovanna discloses that Michele is adopted during a phone conversation. Michele emerges from the house shocked and hurt and makes her way to a nearby swing. Stella shows up as he is swinging and believes Michele to be a ghost. She doesn't appear to be afraid and instead requests his friendship. To speak with her, he draws a happy face in the sand. They decide to have another meeting. After Stella has left, Michele notices an invisible figure nearby staring at him. The man, who is blind, goes away while holding a stick. Michele stops at Stella's house at night. Stella is overjoyed to have a new buddy who is invisible. The moment the two kiss, Michelle's abilities begin to weaken. Before Stella can see his face, he flees. Later, Stella is in her gymnastics class by herself when she is struck in the back by a needle. She collapses unconscious as a result. Meanwhile, Michele has made the decision to tell Stella that he is the boy who is invisible. He walks his dog and makes his way to her gymnastics class. When he arrives at the structure, he spots a man in a mask carrying Stella. The man gets attacked by Michele, and the dog bites his hand. The male does, however, succeed in getting away with the girl. The police eventually show up on the scene. They believe that the missing children were abducted rather than simply running away. Stella awakens in an unfamiliar facility where her head is wired up in numerous places. She is being questioned by psychiatrist Bashful there. It turns out that he is the one responsible for abducting the kids. The girl is given certain tests before being placed in a jail. There are also two of her other buddies who had vanished prior to her. The blind man from the previous day unexpectedly materializes in front of Michele the next day when he is alone at a nearby beach. Before Michele can pose any questions, the man responds to all of them. He appears to be able to read thoughts. The man confesses his name is Andrade and that he is Michelle's father when Michele asks who he is. The youngster accuses Andrade of lying since he doesn't believe him. Then Andrade starts to relate his tale. Before a catastrophic nuclear explosion struck the community, he was a regular man from a tiny Russian village. Many people were killed by the radiation, while others had irreversible changes caused to them. It led to a mutation in their DNA that gave them special superhuman skills like flight, telepathy, invisibility, and other things. These individuals, known as the Specials, were taken to a military base known as the Division and used as weapons. They were used to the limit by the Division. The specialties became weaker the more power they expended. Everyone, with the exception of Andrade and Michelle's mother, was sterile, which was a further negative consequence. Therefore, it was impossible to breed new specialties. Michele, the first special child, was born to the couple, but they whisked him away as soon as he was born. The parents successfully fled with Michele after deciding to do so. However, the members of the Division were not going to yield. To get the couple to return the child, they pursued them. While Michelle's mother could become invisible, his father could read people's minds. Although Andrade and Michele were able to escape, his wife was slain by the Division. Andrade read Michelle's mind and determined she was a wonderful person, but he knew she wouldn't be secure with him, so he placed him in front of Giovanna's door. The fact that the exceptional child resides in the town is now known to the residents of the Division. Therefore, they are abducting kids and testing them to discover if they have extraordinary abilities. Michele is astounded to learn his true origin. He nearly doesn't believe it when Andrade says that the fisherman next to them has reported them to the police because he feels Andrade is suspicious. Michele receives a suit from Andrade that vanishes with him. He then erases the memory of the fisherman and walks away. Bashful and the police arrive quickly. When Giovanna tells him that Michele is an adopted child, Bashful starts to think that he might be the exceptional child. He says he'll drive Michele home. When they go home, Michele sees Bashful's hand injury, which is right where his dog bit the kidnapper of Stella. He tries to flee while maintaining a suspicious gaze on the man. It turns out that Bashful is planning to kidnap him and has barred every door. Running into a room, Michele strips off his clothing and vanishes. While Bashful chases after him, he succeeds in escaping. Michele notices his bully Ivan riding his bike as they are walking down the street. He sits behind him and requests that he go right immediately. Ivan, who is uneasy, agrees. When they get to a secure location, Michele makes himself known to Ivan and tells him everything about the kidnapping of their classmates. Stella and her friends can see vents on the ceiling in the background. Stella is able to exit by climbing on top of them. She climbs a tower to reach a searching light while evading guards. She draws a smile on the light and flashes it upward, thinking that her invisible buddy is searching for her. When Michele notices the happy expression, she thinks Stella is trying to make a hint about them. Ivan and he pursue the light, but as soon as they arrive, the guards see Stella. As an invisible Michele enters, Ivan uses his paintball rifle to trigger an electric malfunction. He observes Giovanna and Andrade, who have teamed up to search for Michele, being watched by Bashful and his men. He then continues on and kills a guard. He threatens the other guard with his gun to let Stella and the others out of the cell by opening it. Michele surprises his companions by revealing himself after he has freed them and cornered the guards inside. The boys want to go, but Stella persuades them to help an elderly guy she saw imprisoned in a different chamber. When she and Michele arrive to save the victim, Stella brings him to the bad guys instead and threatens Michele with a gun. The elderly man behind her begins to speak as she abruptly passes out. It transpires that he possesses the capacity for mind control. To get Michele here, he has been in control of bashful and Stella. Then he sends Michele and Stella into a submarine that he has just brought down. The two are taken into the sea by the men. Andrzej and Giovanna arrive at the location right then and there to greet Ivan. In a few seconds, the building will detonate. Bashful is immediately rescued from inside, along with the two kidnapped children. When Andrzej reads Bashful's thoughts, he learns that someone was in charge of him. They leave the building swiftly, and then it explodes and is torn to bits. Michele discovers his telekinesis ability while inside the submersible and begins destroying everything. He kills the soldiers with the use of his abilities, preserving both Stella and himself. They return to the shore at last, where a large crowd is waiting for them. Michele displays his power by becoming invisible in front of them. Michael is informed by Andrzej that they must erase everyone's memories since the division would seek them out once more. Stella accepts Michele's request, and they share one final kiss. After wiping out everyone's memories, Andrzej promises Michele he will return and then departs. Then everyone resumes living their regular lives. Somewhere in Russia is shown in the scene clipped. The encounter left Michele's mother, who was presumed dead, only slightly injured. Back then, she had won the division and she now controls it. Actually, she was the one who dispatched those individuals to retrieve Michele for her. She is now opposed to all the normal people who treat them like freaks. Finally, a guard tells her that even though they lost Michele, they have discovered Natasha, his twin sister. We can see from a flashback that Andrzej fled that day with two kids. The guard concludes the film by telling Michele's mother that Natasha is somewhere in Morocco, giving away the possibility of a follow-up. To support the channel, switch on notifications, subscribe for more content like this, and leave a like. I appreciate your attention.